All right, everybody, we are back with our first of hopefully many Fantasy Wolves segment. We're happy to welcome Mitchell, or Mitch, he doesn't care, Renz. Let me give you a little background on this guy. This is coming directly from the Twitter feed. He is a PhD in fantasy football, and that is not easy to come by. I'm pretty sure that's at least a 4-year program. Head writer and host at the Gridiron Experts, the Empire Fantasy Podcast. He's also a feature writer at Fantasy Pros and the Fantasy Football Ballers, and a local guy. We're thrilled to have him. Thanks for coming on the show, Mitchell.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. And yeah, follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365. And I'm glad you noticed the PhD, but it doesn't quite stand for what you think it does. It stands for passion, honesty, and determination. And I believe if you bring that anything that you do in life, you're going to be successful. So that's why it's there.
So you're not actually a doctor?
No, far from it.
Good life coach, though. That's fantastic
way, I know, seriously, love it. All right, so Fantasy Wolves segment. We're thrilled about this. I was talking to our Wolf before we came on the air, and I was like, this is kind of like in the Old West potentially when two guys were gonna have a showdown out in the street, and then everyone else would kind of run for cover, and like there'd always be that one guy that would jump into a barrel and like kind of look up over the top. That's kind of how I feel right now, being in the presence of two wolves like this, and I'm looking forward to getting into the interview. Our Wolf, you want to get started? Mitchell's getting loose over there.
Well, yeah, why don't you just start real quick with we've given the summary of what we know about you just from your Twitter profile, what we've read about a little bit from you, but who are you and why should our listeners trust you?
Well, you guys should definitely trust me because I write for 3 very high-quality companies, Fantasy Pros, the Fantasy Footballers, and Gridiron Experts. Even though I have been doing this for 12 years now, but I've actually only been doing it in the fantasy football industry for a little over a year. My marketing background definitely helps me gain that following, but ultimately I think people should be interested in what I have to say, especially on social media, because I feel like I'm a good guy. I'm definitely willing to help out everyone, and I'm always recommending solid people to follow and what not to do there, but I'm going to be in Fantasy Pros rankings, and I just got invited to go to Toronto for the Fantasy Sports show, and I'm going to be a speaker there, so that'll be a really awesome opportunity for me there, and yeah, I hope that answers it.
Fantastic, yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's fair. You got a least favorite football team?
Least favorite? In all honesty, I don't really think it's the least favorite football team, probably least favorite player, Joe Flacco.
Okay, this is even better. That's great. That's even better for the hypothetical I'm going to throw out at you. So here's your 2 choices. And actually, it's going to involve someone that was affiliated with Flacco. One option is you get up tomorrow morning and you say, you hold a small press conference, you go on Twitter and everything, and you announce that you are, for the rest of your life, a diehard Joe Flacco fan. You think he's probably the best quarterback of all time, and you got to go all in for the rest of your life. Like that, it's the real deal forever. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is you go across the middle, maybe to catch a pass from Joe Flacco, kind of a lazy pass across the middle, and a prime Ray Lewis is going to come across the middle and lay you out one time. Which would you take? One's life, one's 1 second, but it could potentially end your life, I guess.
So they both could easily potentially end my life. I feel like I just have to go with number 2, just because number 1 literally is not possible.
Couldn't do it, even if Ray Lewis was right there, and was like, "I'm going to lay you out."
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, Joe Flacco is like my mortal enemy, but being on the same field as Ray Lewis would be pretty cool, even though he'd be absolutely crushing me. So
this might be my favorite answer yet. I've asked a lot of beat writers. It's funny how many people are willing to take the hit, rather than sacrifice their principles and pull for a team or a player they hate. So you're in good company. Thanks for being honest.
Yes, and we're about to get into the segment where I've looked over your rankings, and there's tons I love about them, a few things that I certainly have some disagreement about. But just real quick, before we get into that part, we're talking about Fantasy Wolves here, and you're somebody that we read and we like, and we love the articles you've brought to the table so far. But just in your own kind of words, what is it that separates you from the pack? What makes you a Fantasy Wolf? What's your approaches, your strategies, things like that? What makes you a Fantasy Wolf, would you say?
I'm not afraid to be different. I know last year I was really low on guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Matt Forte, when a lot of people were trying to take these guys, and I think DeAndre Hopkins wasn't even in my top 20. And just because I looked at the numbers, I ran the projections, and I feel like in this industry, when we see top 100s and we see big name guys and they drop all these stats on us, and people are afraid to be different. And I don't know, if you want to get anywhere in life, you need to be at least a little bit different and not be afraid to take a risk. And I mean, it's fantasy football. I mean, let's have fun with it. Right. Let's go with guys who we like. And so I think that's definitely how we separate.
Absolutely. And I think it segues pretty well into one of the first things. Some of the things that we're both different on, but are in agreement on. I absolutely love Doug Martin as compared to the industry. It looks like you're pretty significantly higher on him as compared to Gridiron Experts, who have him generally at 74, but you have him up at 54. That's right along with me, as I have him at 53. The expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros is around a 73 right now. What do you love so much about Doug Martin? We're both in agreement there.
I think his upside, I think whether we're doing life, you said you're a teacher, we need to learn from past history. And then in the 5-year career that Doug Martin has had, he's had 2 years where he's been super motivated, his rookie season and his contract year. And I think this year he's also super motivated. In those 2 seasons, he had over 1,400 rushing yards. And I don't think he's obviously going to be able to get to the 1,400 yards, but we saw last year with Le'Veon Bell, he dropped, his value went super down simply because he was missing those 3 games. And if you can get Doug Martin later on, and if he is that kind of guy who's going to be an every work back in that offense at Tampa Bay, I'm all in on that.
Yeah, I'm with you. RB1 weekly upside. Jacquizz Rodgers fill in fine for the first couple games, and you get him at 150 ADP or something like that. And that overall offense, it's going to be so explosive. We had a guy, Trevor Sikkema, for the Bucs on, and he was saying, he's a beat writer from Tampa. He's saying he's never seen Doug Martin in this type of shape, making plays all over the field. Another thing we're in agreement on that is different from the industry is Alshon Jeffrey is not our favorite guy. What do you not like about Alshon?
Oh man, there is. Where do I even begin? I don't know. I wrote an article earlier in the year for Gridiron Experts called 70 Foles Gold Players, and the only comparison I could make with Alshon Jeffrey and Gold was just how soft they are. This guy has really never been able to prove that he can stay on the field, and I think it is in his last 21 games, he's been questionable for 13 of them, and ultimately fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Mm-hmm. That's not fun. He's not fun to own. He's the ultimate headache, and he's just a guy who I'm just never going to put any money on. And let's think about the fact that the Eagles last year were like top 6 in pass attempts, and yet only had 15, 16 touchdowns.
Right, yeah.
Wentz only threw 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter last year, and I don't think that just adding Alshon and Torrey Smith and all of a sudden this Eagles offense is just going to be chucking the ball all around. I don't know. Alshon has never been able to prove that he's a number 1 receiver. He had his good years with Brandon Marshall. And until he can prove to me that he can stay on the field and produce at a high level, I'm just not going to take him at that risk. And I also don't think he's going to play all the games. So
yeah. I'm pretty sure. I just wrote an overpriced players article, and I think I might have actually quoted you on that stat. The 21 games it's been questionable and 13 or whatever it was. Great stuff. Yeah, complete headache. And then the last big agreement that I wanted to point out, a guy I love that you seem higher on too, is Hunter Henry. I don't know exactly what tight end he is, but you have him up at 82 versus around 103 for the rest of Gridiron Experts. I similarly have him right in that 80 range as compared to 110 for the expert consensus. What do you like so much about Henry?
The upside. And I think when we're looking at tight ends, luckily I actually had the opportunity to do the Scott Fish Bowl this year, and it's very, very tight end heavy. So I really wanted to concentrate on tight ends and their projections. And honestly, if I can't get Gronk in like the 3rd round, which a lot of times I don't get him anyway, I kind of wait on Henry, and it's because of that upside. Hunter Henry last year was a rookie tight end, tied the NFL league high with 8 touchdowns, and which never really happens. And he was also had very limited work with Antonio Gates there. And I think this year, the Chargers have already come out and said that last year they tried to get Gates the record, and he's tied with the record. Mm-hmm. I think once he gets the record, Gates isn't going to go away, and how he's even still running on a field, I think, just baffles my mind. But Hunter Henry, I think, is the clear-cut, better tight end. And now I could even move him up even more now with the news that Mike Williams just came out. If he misses the entire season, you could just see a little uptick in targets there. And Hunter Henry's the real deal. He's a good athlete, and Rivers has always shown that he's loved the tight end. So I'm pretty high on Henry.
100% agreement there. Love all those points that you just made on him. So those are the three big agreements, but now I've got the ones that I disagree a little bit. And the first is Mike Gillislee, who I do actually like. I want to say I like Mike Gillislee a lot. You know, the LeGarrette Blount role he could potentially have, 18 TDs. Blount had. I think Gillislee's a better talent. But the Patriots have just been so tough to predict over the years. One year they'll have Ridley have 15 TDs and 1,400 yards, and then he'll just be benched for a fumble, and you'll never hear from him again after you take him in the second round. So what is it about Gillislee that you're just so high on at 24 and think he's going to buck this trend of inconsistency?
So to be honest, I actually just updated my running back rankings, and Mike Gillislee is my running back 12. So I can even open up your eyes a little bit more.
I think it was 24 overall. I mean, I'm looking at the top 100 when I say that. Yeah. So I mean, that's extremely high at the end of the second round for Mike Gillislee, RB12 as well. Yeah, that's huge. So what is it? What do you love so much about him? That's crazy. I think that's got to be the highest in the industry right now.
RB12 is probably up there. 24, if that's what it is, that might be a typo. I'm gonna have to change that. But no, I really like Gillislee simply because, I mean, let me ask you guys something.
All right.
Will the Patriots get a lot of first downs, and will the Patriots score points?
Of course.
Absolutely. And I want to be clear. Our resident Wolf, is the type that goes all in on anybody the Patriots sign. Like when they had Rex Burkhead before their recent signings, he was looking for reasons to tell us that Rex Burkhead was going to be like the next Adrian Peterson. That's why I'm so interested to hear what you have to say about Gillislee, who I also like Gillislee. I'm interested to know, I want to hear from, are you a huge Patriots homer as well? Like you love the Pats?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
I like football.
All right. Well, then I want to hear what you have to say even more.
Okay, so like Rex Burkhead, for example, I think is just a really, really solid special teams guy, and Belichick loves special teams guys. They had money, went out and bought him. I mean, we see all the time, if a guy isn't used the right way, the Patriots aren't afraid to go out and get a guy who they consider as a football player and can do it, especially in special teams.
Right.
Mike Gillislee last year has the highest yards per carry in the NFL, 5.7.
Yep.
He also averaged 6.4 yards per carry against the Patriots in the two games that they played with like 115 yards and a touchdown. What did I say before? The Patriots take those in-division guys, they turn them into studs. I mean, we're talking like Wes Welker, Chris Hogan, even Revis, they took them on the defensive side. Also, I think he's going to be in that LeGarrette Blount role. I'm not saying he's going to get 299 carries, 18 touchdowns. But I could easily see him getting 200 carries. They're killing the clock at the end of the games, which I think the Patriots are going to be in a lot of those situations. And I think he's going to be that first down back. And Mike Gillislee last year had the most or the highest, I believe, first down run percentage. 38.6% of his runs resulted in first downs. And I think it's a perfect fit. I mean, we've seen the Patriots really lean on a power running back in the past. I mean, you said Stephen Ridley. And I mean, I think he is the only guy who is not a pass-catching running back, which is fine with me, but Patriots are going to be winning a lot of games. And even if he gets 12 touches a game, and if he can get around 5.7 yards a clip on that Patriots offense, he's got the upside. He's going to be around the goal line.
I think those are all great points. I might have to reevaluate where I have him. I had him up at RB19 a while ago, and I dropped him a little bit with all the rumblings of the news. But, I mean, those are all great points. The first downs, the bleeding the clock, 24 is still 24 overall, pretty high, but RB12, there's certainly the upside for that. If he gets that workload that you're expecting, 12, 15 touches, then I don't see any reason why he can't perform that. So I've been somewhat swayed on that one. This one you might have a little bit of a harder time with. It's Tyreek Hill down at 89. So I imagine you're not a Tyreek Hill guy if you have him all the way down at 89 overall, below John Brown from the Cardinals. So I want to kind of hear first Tyreek Hill, why no Tyreek Hill love? What do you not believe in? And then a little bit about John Brown. What's the upside here?
So first, I don't believe in Tyreek Hill because I think he's kind of a gadget player, and I think I don't want to say Cordell Patterson, but like I don't know, kind of Percy Harvin-ish a little bit. But honestly, the main reason why I don't trust Tyreek Hill is because he's on the Chiefs. I mean, Alex Smith last year had a career high 3,502 passing yards. I mean, let's not forget Alex Smith also 2 years ago had a season where he didn't even throw a touchdown to a wide receiver. I mean, that's only 2 years ago, and we're forgetting about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're saying they're going to manufacture touches for this guy, but ultimately, I mean, are we really – I'm not confident in the Chiefs' offense, and it's not something that I'm going to invest in. Yes, I understand he had a good year last year, but – and we've seen so many guys, especially gadget players, they have one good year. I mean, it's not – I mean, Devin Hester. Devin Hester was an amazing gadget player. He's an amazing special teams player. They tried to convert him to a wideout, couldn't do it. Some guys are just really good in certain positions, and Tyreek Hill is a better receiver, I would think, than Hester and Cordell Patterson, but I don't know. I think the hype is way too high. I mean, Tyreek the Freak is an amazing athlete, but it doesn't mean he's a good wide receiver.
I know. I just see when I watch his film, I'm more of a films guy than a stats guy, and I just see a guy that I see him get off the line better than Patterson, who couldn't beat press coverage, and I see this guy he's small, but he's so quick twitch. He reminds me, I mean, this is obviously way too hyperbolic. He's not the next Antonio Brown, but just the way he can just go one direction and then his suddenness to go the other way. I see him getting releases against guys like Chris Harris and Richard Sherman. There's tape of him just kind of getting free releases off the line. He can beat him deep. Alex Smith is a huge factor there. I definitely agree that he's not an upside quarterback. I just think when you can score 12 touchdowns on less than 40% of the offensive snaps, and now you're talking about a full-time player. Yes, he's going to have more defensive attention. Yes, I'll have tape. I don't know. I have him up at, you have him 8-9. I have him up in like my high 30s. So I guess we'll agree to disagree on that one, but I think a lot of people are throwing him in that gadget player, Tavon Austin, Patterson type of guy. I just think he has so much more raw talent and skill than those guys, and his work ethic's insatiable. I love him. I think he's going to actually develop into a very solid receiver. And, Alex Smith is a very high percentage guy. I think the quick slants, he's going to be peppered with them. I see him in a whole different light, I guess.
The truth is I'm pretty much halfway between you guys. I think our Wolf is way too high on him. I think you're probably too low on him. I will say that Chris Clark from the Locked On Chiefs podcast said that he thought that getting rid of Macklin was a horrible move, and that's going to detrimentally affect Tyreek Hill on over-the-top plays and stuff like that, for whatever it's worth.
Yes. Fair enough. What about John Brown? You have him above Hill. You really think John Brown's going to outscore Hill this year?
I think it's cool that you dropped a name like Antonio Brown, because I think we need to not forget that when John Brown was drafted in the exact same scheme, or like by the Bruce Arians scheme, Antonio Brown was also drafted by the Bruce Arians scheme. They're both 5. I believe John Brown's 5'11", 179. Antonio Brown's 5'10", 180. Through the first 3 seasons of their careers, Antonio Brown has 152 catches. John Brown has 151 catches. John Brown has 200 more yards and 7 more touchdowns than Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown in his 4th year had 110 catches, 1,499 yards, and I believe 8 touchdowns. The other name that got thrown around with John Brown when he was coming out was Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison, in his 4th year, I believe had 115 catches, 1,663 yards, and 12 touchdowns. If John Brown's getting compared to those guys and he's now entering his 4th year, I think his upside alone on a team with the Cardinals, who we talk about how bad they were. I mean, Carson Palmer averaged 282 passing yards last year, 6th highest in the NFL. I think he had this sickle cell trait issue, and I'm not a doctor for Arizona, but if they feel like they have it figured out.
Despite the PhD.
Despite the PhD, exactly. But you almost have to kind of take their advice, and if they think that they have it figured out, I'm going to believe in John Brown, because, just 2 years ago, the guy was putting up 1,000 yards, and he looked unbelievable. And when you want to talk about just metrics and like being able to run routes and stuff, I do believe in reception perception by Matthew Harmon.
Great article, yeah.
Matt
I'm
Harmon.
A fan. Yep.
And we have it for the fantasy footballers, and his reception perception is off the charts. John Brown. Yep. So I believe in the talent, and I think he is a smaller guy, but he does compare to these guys like Antonio Brown, Marvin Harrison on paper. I'm not saying he's going to come out and put up, 110 catches, 1,400 yards, and 10 touchdowns, but I think the upside's there, and that's why I'm going to go with John Brown.
All right, interesting. Michael Floyd being removed, that certainly helps. More target share. And
That helps everyone.
What about J.J. Nelson, though? He's not. This isn't even in the rankings or part of the question, but I thought J.J. Nelson, similar, small guy, speedy. You're not worried about him taking over the number 2 role next to Larry Fitz? You think it's definitely John Brown's gig?
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely John Brown's gig just because he's a more talented receiver. I think JJ is more of a straight line guy. And I mean, there's still a lot of mouths to feed in that Cardinals offense. I mean, I think they had the 3rd most pass attempts last year with 646. So, I mean, they're still going to chuck the ball. I mean, and you can't. Teams have to respect the run game, especially with David Johnson there, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of deep balls for Brown.
Alrighty, interesting case. I hadn't had Brown that high on my radar yet. I think I definitely got to reconsider that. Not going to move him up above Tyreek Hill anytime soon, personally, but
it's a shame.
We'll see about that one at the end of the year. I got a couple more written down here. Probably only have time for one of them, so I'm trying to think. Christian McCaffrey.
Go with McCaffrey.
Yeah, let's go with McCaffrey because I think that's the next biggest difference that we have. And he's a guy. I think these were standard league rankings, so maybe that's partly why you have him so down at 84. But I mean, I'm a diehard McCaffrey guy. I think he's going to be a workhorse in the sense of 7 catches a game, maybe 10 carries a game. Not getting the ball 25 times up the middle, but just kind of redefining that usage type of thing of 17, 15 touches, whatever it is. And I think he's just such an explosive guy. He's going to do a lot of damage with that. But you have him down at 84, so you're clearly not a believer right now. What do you think of McCaffrey?
I think McCaffrey, from a talent standpoint, is an unbelievable running back. I'm a big believer in the 3-cone drill for running backs, and his 3-cone drill is incredible.
It was ridiculous, yeah.
I just think he's on the worst offense possible for his skill set. Carolina Panthers offense is unbelievably boring. Cam Newton is statistically the worst quarterback in like the last 10 years at throwing to running backs. It's actually not even close. I mean, his short yardage accuracy is ugly. I think his QBR with like passes like under like 5 yards or something like that is like 12. Like it's really bad. Carolina Panthers did just sign Jonathan Stewart to an $8 million deal. I mean, $8 million in the NFL, in today's NFL, is a lot of money.
For
Carolina
running back,
Panthers,
especially. Yeah.
Correct. That's what I mean. The Carolina Panthers have already come out and said Jonathan Stewart's going to be their workhorse. He's going to be their every down back. So, like, I don't really know how McCaffrey's going to fit into it. I don't see him getting – I mean, if he can get 10 touches a game, awesome. But, like, I see that more like 5 catches and 5 carries. I think he's going to be used more in special teams. Interested to see what they do with Curtis Samuel. And, I mean, I don't know, Cam Newton last year, he literally had career lows in rush attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. And, I mean, he has never been a guy that's proven that he can pass. I mean, minus his MVP season where he threw for 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, his career average is 20 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and like just under 4,000 yards. I don't know. I like McCaffrey as a talent, but man, I just wish he was on a different team.
Yeah, the only thing I would say against that one is they've talked so much, the Panthers have, about just redefining their offense. I know it's easy to go back at the past numbers and whatnot. I'm more thinking about what they might look like in the future. Like you mentioned Samuel and McCaffrey. I'm picturing a very just quick strike, just like kind of almost like the Patriots, how they use Woodhead and how they've, cut system. I know Newton's clearly not a Brady in terms of accuracy, especially in the short game. I'm just picturing a new type of offense where they really leverage these short, I've seen the comments from the GM too praising McCaffrey for the inbox running. I know Stewart, they said is the workhorse, but how long is he going to hold up such a big injury history? I think it's just a matter of time. Maybe it's not the first few weeks, but only a matter of time before McCaffrey's just the guy there, whether it's injury, whether he's just doing it. I'm just such a big believer in the talent. I don't even know if the Panthers could hold him back. So we'll see, though. All good points as well. I think we are ready now for the rapid fire no huddle segment. If you are, you good with that?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. I think I'm all stretched out.
All right.
All right.
All right. We're not going to work you too hard on the first question. Who should go first overall in fantasy drafts?
Le'Veon Bell.
All right. I love it.
All right, give us your. I'm going to just hold back from any disagreements or anything. But give us your most undervalued QB, running back, receiver, and tight end.
Most undervalued QB, I would say, is Phillip Rivers. Running back, honestly, man, I'm going to go out and say Mike Gillis. I think he's the most underrated. Wide receiver. Oh, we'll go Sammy Watkins.
Love Sammy Watkins.
And tight end. Oh, I can't even think of the guy's name right now. I'm just totally drawing a blank. Let's go Hunter Henry.
Yeah, your guy.
Or actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. Eric Ebron.
Okay.
I like Ebron. All right, exact same question, but let's go overvalued. Overvalued quarterback. Who's the most overvalued quarterback?
Derek Carr, easily.
Wow. Oh, okay. I'm going to hold back as well. Overvalued running back.
Jordan Howard.
We agree on that. Overvalued wide receiver.
Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, we're on the same page there too. Overvalued tight end.
Travis Kelce.
You just got a lot of points with us.
What early round draft pick, so rounds 1 through 3, is going to ruin fantasy seasons?
Going to absolutely ruin them. Well, I'll say this. I don't know who it's going to be, okay? But since 2003, I know we're kind of getting away from this. Since 2003, at least one of the consensus top 3 running backs has finished out of the top 10.
I've seen that stat, which is crazy. Who's it going to be this year?
Well, it's kind of leaning towards Zeke, but injuries make me think Le'Veon. So
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's why I go David Johnson, number 1. Wasn't going to interject my opinion, but had to.
You had to, though.
Le'Veon, though, averaged last season 157 total yards.
Oh, per game basis.
I've made this point to the Wolf. He knows. He chooses to ignore it.
I don't think he's going to make it through all 16, whether on the field or off.
If you want to crunch some numbers, look at Le'Veon Bell's statistics with Martavis Bryant. It'll open your eyes.
Stats. Unbelievable, yeah.
Okay.
It's just, and even Antonio Brown, it's just crazy how that whole offense is just insane with Martavis Bryant. But I love Martavis Bryant too. Can't wait for him to be back. All right, truth tip with 5.
What mid-round draft pick is going to win people some titles?
Mid-round pick, Samaje Perine.
Big fan of Samaje. We'll see about that one. So we call them penny stocks. Most call them the late round lottery tickets. Give us the 1 or 2, late round penny stock guys that you need to have this year.
Kenneth Dixon and Duke Johnson.
Nice.
Interesting.
The single most important move fantasy owners can make in 2017 that'll win them a title is ...
Follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365.
He had that one loaded in the chamber, ready to go.
Oh, man, that was going to be our next thing, is just remind us of your socials, how to follow you. You gave us that. You can give it to us again. And also combine that with your boldest prediction of the year.
My boldest prediction is Ben Roethlisberger will throw for over 5,000 yards this season. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365. Check out my podcast, Gridiron Experts Podcast. Subscribe, listen to it. Check out fantasyfootballtshirts.com. And check out all my work at Fantasy Pros, Fantasy Footballers, and Gridiron Experts.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for the time, Mitch. This was fantastic stuff. I love all the conversations, love the agreements, disagreements. I think it's going to be very valuable for all the people listening, so that's fantastic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Can't wait to be on again.
Yeah.